What's up again, patrons? This is Adi bringing you enhanced analysis number 6. In this enhanced analysis, we're going to be looking at Olympiacos' second leg victory over Fenerbahce. This analysis is going to go a little bit more in depth to cover the historic tie that saw Olympiacos make it to its first ever European semifinal. Now that we've already seen Jose Luis Mendilibar in action, the analysis will be a little bit different than the last one. This time, we're going to evaluate Mendilibar off of what we have seen over the course of the last 2 months. So instead of this time us discovering what a potential in terms of tactics, potential in terms of shapes, we're now going to be evaluating based on what's been going on, which is exciting. So this should be a fun one. And without further ado, let's get on with the analysis. Now, Olympiacos finished in Turkey what it started just a week prior in Greece after leading 3-0 in the Yoros Karaskaki Stadium. A suspect penalty given up by none other than Panos Retsos led the way for 2 goals to be scored by Fenerbahce. Olympiacos dominated the game, not in a normal possession-based build-up, but via attack by defense. To be specific, Mendilibar employed an extremely high and intense press against Fenerbahce. Fenerbahce clearly underestimated Olympiacos with a rotated squad and was just utterly shell-shocked by it. Their defensive line made a multitude of mistakes, 2 of which led directly to goal-scoring opportunities, and another which led indirectly to one. Unfortunately, Retos' penalty and Mendilibar's inability to make changes more rapidly saw our 3-0 lead cut down to a single goal lead. The primary takeaways from the match were that our press was successful, clearly, but unsustainable. Fenerbahce, once Fred, Kadioglu, and Ismail Yukchuk were on the pitch, were just a completely different animal. Now, the second leg would prove to be a more difficult affair because there is a full-powered Fenerbahce side and an Olympiacos side without some of its other options, including Panos Retsos, who is out for suspension with a yellow card. But on the bright side, Daniel Podence returned for the second leg, and from his suspension, he returned from the first leg. So the starting 11 for Olympiacos in Turkey would be exactly the same as the first leg, only with 2 specific changes. Andreas Doi for the suspended Retsos and Daniel Podence returning from suspension, taking the place of Yorgos Masouras. We line up 4-4-2. Fenerbahce has a fully powered 11, only missing Mishi Batshuayi, and they line up in a 4-3-3. So the first 15 minutes of the match, incredibly difficult for us on a whole. And you'll see in this diagram here, as you follow along with the analysis, we have plotted the average position of both teams when they receive the ball. So based on the average positioning, you get an idea of how the shapes were and how things were going on during the course of the match. Now, Fenerbahce had the lion's share of possession, while we could barely string a few passes together. All of this while our press was much less effective. With the full starting 11 of Fenerbahce on the field, they were more experienced, quite frankly, better players that were just calmer under pressure and able to move the ball around. We didn't see as many cheap mistakes to capitalize on. And to make matters worse, our buildup was lacking on top of all of this. We averaged 2.4 passes per possession compared to Fenerbahce's 4.58, amassed one shot worth 0.05 xG in this interval. Now, that opportunity was from a clever individual effort from Chiquinho when he flicked the ball over the defender and he took a hopeful long-range shot. Fenerbahce had similar luck as they amassed 3 shot opportunities. One was a free kick overhit by Dzeko. Another was a bit of a lackadaisical opportunity from the likes of Fred, and the other was well-worked build-up culminating in the Fenerbahce goal. Now, the goal by Ismail Kaveci was a very well taken near side with his left foot. I mean, if he takes that shot another 4 or 5 times, he probably misses. But look, either way, he scored what was otherwise not a big scoring chance. Outside of the goal, Fenerbahce had similar problems in the final third as we did. The only difference was that they had more of the ball, and then by default, more transitions into the final third. Now, the 16th to the 30th minute interval saw us take more control of the game. Possession went 63 to 37% in our favor, but for all the extra possession and all the extra time we had the ball, it really didn't do us any good. We had plenty of transitions into the final third, but we made mistake after mistake after mistake and ended up with the same number of shot opportunities as Fenerbahce. Zero. Goose egg. The possessions in the interval weren't messed up because of bad passes, but every time we would make really poor decisions when we had the ball at our feet. Inability to turn on a defender or hold the ball at our feet just ruined everything. It wasn't just one person either. I mean, Daniel Podence screwed up a great ball from Ortega that was through and failed to beat Asai Samuel on any occasion in this interval. El Kabi had a heavy touch that ruined a chance as well as Ortega. Even Costas Fortunis lost the ball attempting to take players on. I mean, these offensive duels were super poor on our end. We didn't even win 19% of them on a whole. I mean, in fact, Fenerbahce won a much higher percentage of their duels than we did. While we had the ball for more occasions going into the final third, we were incredibly poor once the ball finally got into Fenerbahce's final third. The only thing we really did that was positive in this interval was we kept our foot on the gas. We and that was through our heightened press. Our press kicked up a notch. It went from 30 passes allowed per defensive action to 12, and our midfielders did very well cleaning up poor passes and second balls especially. But just like the issues we had in the first leg, our buildup needed to improve big time for anything to change. The final interval of this half was calamitous. I mean, as a team, we barely completed 58% of our total passes. The mistakes stifled our own buildup constantly, and it allowed a handful of opportunities to Fenerbahce. The most danger of those being a Kaveci shot from our left side of the upper penalty area with his left foot, which was saved by Kostas. Our match tempo dropped down to 12.34 passes per pure minute of possession. That's the worst we've seen under Mendy Libar, and an average of 2.3 passes per possession. Shapes were disjointed, as you can see in the diagram here. The shape was completely disjointed offensively, and it saw players get isolated and doubled down when they had the ball. It then followed with large spaces in transition as numbers would get forward only for us to lose the ball. Then we're caught on the back foot, and Fenerbahce gets into a dangerous transition. Our only saving grace during this point was the press, which continually was dispossessing Fenerbahce, even though they still saw themselves with multiple opportunities. Most of their attacks were kept on the flanks, outside the perimeter, which limited their opportunities inside. Outside of that Kaveci shot, anything that did penetrate was blocked by our defenders. One thing was for sure, though, at this point, halftime was definitely needed in order for us to reorganize things a bit. 1-0 halftime, 3-3 on aggregate, presented us with a couple of challenges. First, while Fenerbahce overall wasn't supremely threatening, except for obviously that middle period where they were more dominant, our press continued to be our strength. But the team was inconsistently able to connect in the final third. We needed to just continue to outlast Fenerbahce's top players like Fred, like Karioglu, like Yukschek, who were visibly growing tired. And they had just played a full 90 minutes the previous Sunday in the debacle of the replayed Turkish Super Cup. Mendilibar needed to make sure we stayed firm in defense, and he also needed to find a way to clog our midfield in a timely manner without waiting for us to concede further. Now, at the start of the second half, Mendilibar would make an early substitution. He would bring on Ibora for Jovetic. Unsurprising given the limited depth available and a need to make sure we had proper timing on our future substitutions in more offensive areas. Now, this change, while it did pull off an offensive asset in Jovetic, it bolstered our midfield and clogged the holes in transition. Just look at how the shape manifested in this chart differently from the second one. And you see that where Ibora goes deeper into the central circle, he's on our side of the central circle. He kind of cuts off that middle lane, which is representative of some of the balls that were going through in the openings that was there. So Jovetic coming in cuts off the central lane. He hangs back in front of defense and helps bolster that. The first 15 minutes of the second half, I mean, were in our favor as a direct result of this. We dominated possession in the interval, 60-40, limited Fenerbahce to only one sequence at all in our final third. And that same sequence, they got two shots off. And This was accomplished with the midfield being a little bit more tight and the fullbacks holding a little deeper for a time being. Even when Fenerbahce got their 2 shots off, they were immediately blocked off by our players. Unfortunately for us, though, the possession that we would get and go forward with, we could do nothing with again. The mistakes we were making in the first half just followed us into this quarter and or uh, interval, I should say, and we just continued to give the ball up in final third transitions. The XG outlook was 0.07 to 0.35 in their favor. In one final entry, they had 2 shots that had much higher quality than anything we produced. Overall, Ibota's introduction did have the desired effect on the defensive end. We limited Fenerbahce's movements and moved the ball around very well ourselves, and moved the ball decently well around ourselves until we got to the final third. That is, we doubled Fenerbahce's transitions into the final third, even though we couldn't punch through. So there was a silver lining in that respect. Now, once we were there, we successfully were able to choke out Fenerbahce, locking them out of the midfield. But we knew we couldn't keep this defensive pressure up forever. Now, in the 61st to 75th minute, things kind of took a tough turn for us. Unfortunately, as we expected in the first segment, the press was unsustainable. We talked about this earlier on in here. Fenerbahce took back control of the game and dominated possession. And to make matters worse, our possession became so poor. Our team pass accuracy dropped to 65% in this interval. And anytime we managed to intercept the ball or create a counter, we just basically gave the ball away immediately. We did attempt to insert some energy into the team with a Yorgos Masura substitution. And while it did bolster the frontline press and give us someone willing to run behind the defender, it did not really help us in the maintenance of our possession of our buildup. In fact, Masuras was swapped to the right side of the field and Fortunis to the left, but you could see Fortunis continuing to drift centrally, which opened up gaps on that left side. At the very least, we did manage to get forward with a couple of half chances and an El Kabi opportunity that killed a few birds. Otherwise, the MVP of this period was Mendilibar's pressing scheme again, and the energy of Masuras running on the back line. I got to tell you, I couldn't believe at the end of this that Heze was able to last and still able to run around. I mean, he continued to move, closing down the passing lanes. Chiquinho was running all over the place too. I mean, uh, we are getting to the final interval of the game, and I'm sitting here wondering how either one of these players are going to be able to walk by the time we get to 90 minutes. Now, during the final interval of regular time, it was just another continuation of what we saw in the 61st to the 75th minute. Fenerbahce continued to dominate possession, and our buildup just continued to be really bad. The linkage between us and whatever we did in the final third was utterly abysmal. Our only scoring opportunity came off of one counter that was deep in our defensive third with Masuras in stride and just a really poor shot 1v1 with the keeper. Once again, though, we succeeded in strangling Fenerbahce in the midfield. And in the middle of the park, their buildup was just nothing. We continued to dominate possession, and they still only managed to amass that single shot, which was through Szymanski. Now, visible signs of fatigue were setting in for Fenerbahce's player, which drastically reduced the number of times they could successfully penetrate our final third. And once again, our frontline pressure, coupled with great anticipation from the likes of Santiago Eze and Vicente Iborra, they did wonders for us defensively. Fenerbahce players were constantly getting trapped in the middle of the park, and even if they did manage to get by, our center backs were capable of cleaning things up today or in this match. Mendilibar ball was working in action, just as we had been explaining it the last couple of months. Now, Fenerbahce would make 2 substitutions, which pretty much neutered their offensive dynamic. They took off Fred and Kaveci, who in this match were probably their best players outside of their fullback Karioglu. They got subbed off. There was no tactics change by Ismail Kartal, their coach, either. Before the end of regulation, we then would bring on Omar Richards as a sub for Francisco Ortega. So in extra time, without their best midfielders, Fenerbahce was at our mercy. Our best opportunities came in extra time while they were limited to only 0.0x 0.06 xG overall on a single opportunity. So all of extra time, we gave up only one scoring opportunity to Fenerbahce. And with the introduction of Andre Horta and El Arabi, we were cementing our dominance, especially offensively, into extra time. Without the clever technique of Gavechi and Fred, there was nothing that they could do to worm out of our pressing traps. Zajic and Unda were nowhere near as effective, and you could see positioning wise, they created even more gaps. Their the in fact their counter press, or what counter press they did have, their midfield presence, it just collapsed. We had our largest number of final third entries in extra time, stretching the wings, but our best chances came by punching up the middle. A set piece from Costas Fortunis led to an Ibora header that hit the post. A David Carmo header got cleared off of the goal line. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get the job done. But even after the extra time was finished, we got the job done in penalties. And we go ahead and we move on and we get to the final, or to the first semifinal in our club's history. Now, after going through everything and discussing the flow of the game, there's one major takeaway we have from Mendilibar so far in Europe. And our primary and best approach is offense by defense. I said this earlier on, and what I mean by that is our core game plan is built off of our press and ability to trap our opponents and then counter from the opportunities we get. Our buildup in these European games is inconsistent at best, even against less quality opposition. As we saw against Fenerbahce, too many of our players are giving up the ball super cheaply. Our saving grace is that we press well, we're organized, and we are relentless. Fenerbahce did not expect that, and they were somehow stupid enough to not expect this twice. We can get exposed, though. As we have seen, if our center backs make one error, which Doy and Retos are likely to do in any given day, we get caught on the break. If Santiago Heze, if he has one bad day, the whole trap in the middle of the park is off balance and we intercept less balls. Mendilibar does not really change anything either. Our scheme very rarely changes during the course of the match, and it didn't change here either. Personnel can change. He may transition to a deeper block, but if things aren't going well, the only thing Mendilibar does is change pieces. He doesn't change tactics overall. At this point, guys, we know what we're going to get from Mendilibar. In the first leg of Fenerbahce, Mendilibar did the same thing that he did here. The only thing is he took too long to make a couple of subs. Now, he did learn from that mistake. He addressed it, and he made substitutions way earlier in this match. There are matches coming up where the margin for error will be even less. And with this already thin European squad list. Look, I believe in this team. I believe that above all, this press can continue to be the key to our success. If our guys can somehow find a way to be just a little bit better and build up, a little bit more clinical when we are connecting into the final third in open play, we have a really strong shot at getting to the finals. I hope you guys like the sixth enhanced analysis. Please let me know what you think so that I can continue to tailor it to be better experience for everybody. This analysis was another fun one as we got to try and evaluate the tactics of Mendilibar based on a nice sample of what we've seen from him over the course of the last 2 months. And we'll do another one on Aston Villa, and we're going to talk about what we saw there, what changed, and what didn't change. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And until next time, this is by the Gates International, by the fans, for the fans.